So what is happening here in the United States Senate is an attempt, I think, to provide a fig leaf of cover when it comes to this issue of taxes. But the problem with that, Mr. President, is this particular cover is a cover not for the taxpayers in this country. It's perhaps a cover for the tax raisers in this country, but it's a small cover. Because if you take $180 billion of taxes revenue or tax relief that is restored under the budget resolution adopted here in the Senate, you can cover some of this stuff. Now, what they propose is say we're going to put back some of the marriage penalty, that the marriage penalty would come back into play under the House-passed version. We're going to restore some of the 10% tax rate, the lowest tax rate that applies to people making $15,000 and less. And we are going to put we're going to provide some death tax relief. We're going to lower the top death tax rate from 55% down to 45%. Well, what does that do, Mr. President? What do you do then about alternative minimum tax, which is going to hit 20 million additional taxpayers if this budget is adopted? What about the child tax credit, which under the Democrat plan is slashed from $1,000 back to $500? What about lower tax rates throughout the rest of the rate schedule? Even if you fix, as they attempt to do with this small amount of tax relief, the 10% lowest tax bracket, you still have tax increases in every other tax rate on the schedule. And in fact, those who are paying 25% taxes is now going to go up to 28%. Those who are paying at the 28% rate currently will see their taxes go up. The rate's going to go up to 31%. Those who are paying at the 33% rate are going to see their tax rates go up to 36%. And those fortunate few who are paying at the 35% highest marginal income tax rate today are going to see their tax rates go up to 39.6%. So my point, Mr. President, is you can provide a fig leaf to say that we're doing something to allow for some of these tax cuts, this tax relief that has benefited our economy and the American people into the foreseeable future. But what about the rest of all these tax breaks, Mr. President, that are going to expire, which means the largest tax increase in American history? And if you look at what the senator from New Hampshire's motion does, it says we want to extend these tax breaks to include the deduction for student loan interest. A lot of working families trying to put their kids through college are taking advantage of that tax break. How about the earned income credit, which is helping a lot of our military families, many who are serving in Iraq and Afghanistan? As I said before, the child tax credit being slashed from $1,000 down to $500, essentially cutting in half the amount of credit that a working family can get for when they file their tax returns for their children, something that was put in place to help working families. And you can go right on down the list. Let's take senior citizens, dividend income. Currently taxed at the capital gains rate of 15%, under this proposal will go up to 39%. We have a lot of seniors in this country, Mr. President, who have invested, now have dividend income, capital gains income. Their capital gains income rates are going to go up as well. If they've got gain income that they're going to show is going to go from 15% up to 20%. My point very simply is, if you pay taxes in America today, the prescription in this budget resolution that was adopted here by the Senate, put forward by our colleagues on the other side, and the one adopted by the House, has one prescription: higher taxes. Every working American who pays taxes today is going to see their tax bill go up. And in fact, in my state of South Dakota, which I'll just use as an example, the average tax increase on a working family in South Dakota would be $2,596 under this budget. 2,840 jobs would be lost and $262 million loss in our economy in my state of South Dakota, which again, probably if you take any other state, you would find the numbers to be dramatically higher in terms of the job loss, in terms of the loss of the local economy, and the impact it's going to have on taxpayers. But again, Mr. President, just in attempt to summarize what I'm saying here is the Democrats have attempted in the form of a fig leaf to provide some amount of tax relief in this budget. But what they don't tell you is that amount of tax relief does nothing to cover the increase in taxes that will occur under this budget. They take about $180 billion off the table and say the American people can keep that, but they're still going to be raising taxes by over $700 billion, even if the Senate version of this budget resolution is adopted in conference. If the House version ends up being adopted, it will be over $900 billion in tax increase, the largest tax increase in American history by 3 times in the House, or 2 times in the Senate. And again, if you take this amount of fig leaf, you can say, well, we're going to put the 10% rate back. We're going to do something to provide some marriage penalty relief because we think that married couples ought not be penalized for being married, which I happen to agree with. And that, frankly, was part of the tax relief that was passed in 2001 and 2003. I think they realize that that is a popular piece of tax relief, and so they're an attempt to restore some of these things, but that doesn't do anything about capital gains and dividends, which is going to hit seniors. That doesn't do anything about R&D tax credits or about the per-child tax credit or anything on the rate structure. Other rates, the rates from the 25% up to 28, from 28 to 31, 33 to 36, and 35 to 39.6, every other rate on the rate schedule is going up under this particular proposal. And so I am here today, Mr. President, to support my colleague from New Hampshire's motion to instruct the conferees as they go into conference between the House and the Senate to say, leave these tax cuts alone. Don't allow them to expire. Don't permit the largest tax increase in American history at a time when the economy is growing and expanding and creating jobs, and we are seeing not less government revenue, but dramatically more government revenue to the tune of $300 billion increase in government revenue just in the past 3 years alone. Mr. President, these tax cuts are working. They are having their desired effect. They are accomplishing what was intended in the first place when this Congress, in its wisdom, enacted these tax cuts in 2001 and 2003. And it would be a shame to take a fig leaf and try to say to the American people, that to the taxpayers in this country, that we're going to provide a little bit of cover for the tax raisers here in the United States Congress, but we aren't going to do anything to provide cover for the American taxpayer, those people who are going to pay higher rates in all these areas if this budget is passed and if the conference report comes back, either with the Senate version or the House version, both of which increase taxes. It's just a question of by how much. And so I hope that we can adopt and get the votes that are necessary to pass the senator from New Hampshire's motion to instruct our conferees to allow these tax cuts to stay in place, allow them not to expire, don't raise taxes, don't do something that would harm our economy and the jobs that are being created by passing the largest tax increase in American history. And so